Once a captive was brought into the dungeon, the expectation was that you would stay in minimum just a day, but the maximum you could stay here almost or over 3 months, because until ships were ready, you definitely wouldn't make it out of this dungeon. The chiefs in Ghana actually brought this plaque to render an apology for Africans' involvement in the trade. Because whatever be the case, Africans also got themselves involved, whether it was one or two. Remember, not all that came out of this castle were Ghanaians. Some were from present-day Nigeria, Togo, Benin, and others. In this castle, all doors and windows you are to see have been restored, with the exception of this one. So this is the only original door we have left here. So if you lose this door, that means all the doors here are not original. The most important thing, we should never forget about the past, because the past is always there to guide us. You forget the past, repeat the same mistake. If you wouldn't want yourself enslaved, then never get yourself involved in any slave activities.
Our Father, hey God,
Alright, so please, we go this way. Alright, so good afternoon. My name is Thomas Abankwa. I'm going to be your guide. So if you have any question, comment, or contribution, you would let me know. But I must say the history here is very traumatic and emotional. The most important aspect is the lesson we have in here. We first would have a look in the male dungeon. We talk about the graves over there. There's a condemned cell before we move upstairs to see some of the offices and apartments used by the Europeans. Everything should end at the door or the gate of no return. This is the Cape Coast slave dungeons. Others do call this place Cape Coast Castle. The structure that we see here happens to be the third and the smallest castle that was built by the Europeans when they came. The coast of Africa, we do estimate about 60 forts and castles to be built here. Just that Ghana alone had almost 40 of them, which was all because of gold. And that made the Portuguese name this region as the Gold Coast. Nigeria, Benin, Niger, and a section of Togo had the name Slave Coast, because that was where most of the West Africans actually were captured from. So areas like Cameroon, Grain Coast, Ivory Coast, and the others got their names based on the resource that they were getting from the lands. A lot of these Africans moving from Nigeria, Benin, Niger, having the forts and castles here should tell us they were walking. And mostly I do use Accra or Kumasi as my reference. Imagine if today you were asked to walk from Accra to this place. The journey and the struggle before you make it to this end. But then this time around, some had to walk beyond the borders of present-day Ghana. A lot of them died, because coming in, wild animals might attack some of them. Some are to get drowned in rivers. Tiredness, sickness, and hunger could also kill them. Making it to the castles, because of the journey they were taking, they created resting points. In Ghana, mostly we call them the slave markets. So from the north down to the south, a lot of them do spread. The largest being Salaga from the north, but then down to the coast, the most popular one is Asin Manso, which is just 50 kilometers away from this place. Over there, they had a river, and that was where most of the captives would get their last bath as Africans. They give them food to eat to regain some strength. Beard and hair is to be shaved so they look younger for the trade. Shea butter will be smeared on the skin, and the purpose of the butter was to heal their wounds and also make them look attractive, because they were bringing them here to be auctioned. Inside this place, they had a section called the Palaver Hall, and over there, nurses, doctors would examine them to know their strength, group them into domestic and commercial captives. Domestic ones were those to work in the castle, commercial ones were those to be exported. Right after grouping them, they would exchange them with commodities such as guns, gunpowders, mirrors, drinkables like rams, sugar, tobacco, and other things that you might have heard they were using for the exchange. Right after, they moved them all to the courtyard for them to be branded. And with the branding, they set fire, would place in metals that had their embossed designs underneath them. So a metal, seen red hot just from the fire, moves into an oil. From the oil to any part of the body, they get stamped. So it could be the chest, shoulder, back, or the arm. Some had their captives pierced with tags like earrings, and others were given metals like anklet before they separate the males from females. So all the males are moving down this way. Closer to the door or the gate of no return, the females would stay to await the ship. And whilst in the castle waiting for the ship, you work. So the structure that we see here, to credit to the English, but then the labor work happens to be the enslaved Africans that were staying in here. I made mention that a lot of forts and castles were built here. Out of these numbers, only 3 were castles, of which the first ever European structure to be built on our land is the St. George's Castle. Popularly today we call it the Elmina Castle, built by the Portuguese around 1482. The second is the Christiansborg or Diosu Castle, built by the Danish around 1661. And the last is where we all find ourselves today, the Cape Coast Castle, also by the English, around 1664. Out of these 3 structures, Cape Coast is the only castle that was built purposely for the transatlantic slave trade. So when you talk of castles, this is the smallest and the last castle that was built. But when you talk of dungeons, this happens to be the biggest dungeon ever to be built in Africa for the transatlantic slave trade. The trade actually took place in 3 continents, which was Europe, Africa, and then the Americas, which lasted for 300 years. And it was around the 1500s when the Europeans had got into the New World. Plantations like sugarcane, tobacco, cotton, coffee, and others got established. The natives from those lands were subjected to work on the plantations, but then the hardship was killing them. They were introduced to disease like measles, pox, influenza, syphilis, tuberculosis, and others, and they were natives of the land, so easily they could escape from the plantations. A Catholic missionary with the name Bartolomeo de las Casas suggested Africans to be used, justifying that Africans were much stronger and that the African system could withstand both tropical disease as well as their European diseases. And looking at the climatic condition in Africa and the work we were doing on our lands, mainly agriculture, it was similar to what they expect us to do out there. So moving the Africans to the new place should be of their best advantage. The then Pope was by name Pope Nicholas V, and he also had the palpable or the decree signed to actually comment with the trade. In here they had different ways to get Africans. Some were raided, kidnapped along the coast by the early Europeans themselves. Some were brought in here as a result of tribal wars and frictions we also had on our lands. Some also got convinced, or some would say deceived, that they were to be given better lives if they joined them to the New World. But then once you get out there, whatever they promised you here is not what you are probably going to get out there. The trade doesn't end in Africa, because after moving them from this place in the New World, plantation owners would exchange them with sugarcane, tobacco, cotton, coffee, rice, and others. The raw materials are sent to Europe to be transformed into finished goods, and all goods are moving back here for the cycle to start all over again. That gave us the triangular trade or the transatlantic slave trade. So basically that is the system. If you have any question, comment, or contribution, you would let me know before we have a look at what happened down there, because a lot is to be seen down there. If you have now no question, please you join me this way. Watch your steps moving down there. Please want to enter, move inside those others are the windows. So please, like I said, once you enter, you move a little back. Others are doing this. Also place your torch out. The flashlights. Alright, so the dungeon those days had no light. Once brought in here, the 3 holes that you see up there serves as their source of vent and also a place to give them light. The male dungeon is divided into 5 chambers. The first, second, third, fourth, straight down to the fifth one. And the estimate we have in here, each room that we stand when fully loaded could hold almost 150 to 200 of them. Because mathematically, they do say about 700 to 1,000 humans should fill the 5 chambers. So divided by 5, we're getting the numbers I'm talking of. But then get to know they were raided, they were kidnapped, hunted through warfare. So they themselves were not counting them. So there's a possibility, it might not be as I'm saying, or probably might exceed what I'm even giving in here. Once they were brought into the dungeons, they expect them to defecate, urinate, sleep, and sometimes eat in the same dungeon. So imagine yourself alone, eating closer to your own poop, but then this time around, the whole place filled with mess. A lot of them got sick, because keeping just this number in here, communicable disease easily would spread amongst us. Aside that, the unhygienic condition would add up to the illness. Cholera, malaria, fever, diarrhea, and others. If you were to die in the dungeons, they wouldn't give you any befitting burial. Bodies will be loaded in sacks, cannonballs will be added to give it weight. They dump all these bodies into the ocean. So the sea out there happens to be mass burial for a lot of the Africans that died in here. If we look on the floor, we'll probably get to see some trenches or drainage systems served as passage for waste in here to move into the sea. When it rains, per the direction of the wind, and as heavy as it is, sometimes will come in here. So through these vents, they move down and out of this thing. Domestic captives would also come in here to clean the place, but they were not doing that on regular basis. Before they come in, some might have stepped on the poop and other staffs making them stuck on the floor. So what they could get from this place, they do so. The rest will be covered with sand. And over the years, they created layers in the dungeon. 1974, which happens to be the same year, this castle was opened to the general public as a tourist site. We had some group of archaeologists from the University of Ghana. They got this place excavated, discovered the bricks as the original floor of the dungeon. So samples were taken from this place to their lab. They got them tested. The results that came out proved that from the second down to the fifth chamber, which the 3 of us will move in this way. As well as the smaller portion they left over there happens to be the toilet, the vomit, the sweat, the blood, the food particles, so things that humans are to excrete and eject from their system. With sand, food, and blood is what we see here. We walk on to the other chambers. They left them unexcavated just to serve as a proof, so that if you don't believe, you could also get samples to test as to whether they contain DNA or not. Once a captive was brought into the dungeon, the expectation was that you would stay in minimum just a day, but the maximum you could stay here almost or over 3 months, because until ships were ready, you definitely wouldn't make it out of these dungeons. So if you were lucky to get in today, the ship comes the next day, you'd move with the ship. But if unfortunately the ship leaves today, you get in the next day, you have to wait for the cycle to end. And there's no exact time that the ship will come. Depending on the issues that will probably happen on their way, determine the time the ship will return. And even today with propellers, sometimes it might take a ship about 2 weeks before it comes to this end. So imagine sailing from this place to the Caribbean before it moves to the Americas, the northern side. From there, we'll have to move to Europe. From Europe before, we'll come back this way. So probably might take a ship, let's say half a year before they return, and of which they'll probably be staying in. But then they wouldn't keep them in the dungeons always. Sometimes they take them out to get them active. That is why I said they used the Africans to build the castle that we see here. Out of the 5 rooms they had, the first one had a gate, because those kept in this room mostly were seen to be the aggressive ones. And most often they were those that were kept in chains to make sure they wouldn't be fighting officers. Even in their weak state, some would still want to fight. Others would also team up to escape from this place. But then these ones were not brought back here. Rather, they had a special cell for them that would visit later. The male dungeons. Question, comment, if you have any, you let me know. If not, we go this way.
Well.
So please, I can move forward a little bit. Alright, so we stopped here all because of this hole. Because above this section of the dungeon, moving to even the second, happens to be a church. And the name of the church was the Society for the Propagation of the Gospel. SPG, that is the same church today we call the Anglican Church or Church of England. Before you enter the church, move out of the church, whatever that was going on in this chamber, you smell, you hear, and get to see it from this room. So if you are closer, if you look up there, you see the gate to the church. The same way you probably can see them there up there, they could also see them here. They smell, and they still preach love your neighbor as yourself up there. And the truth of the matter is that I always say I don't actually have a problem with any religion, but then Christianity those days was never introduced to the Africans for their salvation. It was one of the tools they used to enslave Africans. And when they came in, this is not the only place they were doing this. Almost all the castles had the same system. If you visit Elmina Castle today, you see the Kali Church right above their slave markets. The Dutch took over Elmina Castle, and the Dutch were part of the Protestants, so they didn't want to use the Kali Church. The church they built was right above the female dungeons. You visit Osu, the Presbyterians built their church above the female dungeons. This castle had the Anglican Church up there, Wesley Methodist at the forecourt, and if you came from Accra, I'm sure you saw Fort Amsterdam. Amsterdam is also having a church up above the middle dungeons. So most of these churches played vital roles in the trade. And as well, some of them, just as they were operating here, also had plantations in the Americas that they also feeding Africans over there. At a point, this same place became a school. The school was not for purely Africans, neither purely Europeans. It was made for the mixed race. The kids that they had with the blacks were those they were educating up there. Today, it no longer serves as a school nor a church, rather operates as a library. When we get to the church, you'll see it for yourself. If there is no question, you join me this one.
Did they excavate this place?
No, I said it was only the first chamber excavated. Please go back. Alright, so I made mention the first chamber was excavated, leaving the other four. Looking at where I stand, spreading to the next chamber, you could see some traces of bricks. What it is telling us is that if we are to excavate this place, there should be bricks, probably filling the whole space as we saw in the first chamber. So whatever you are standing on, you probably could guess. The toilets, the vomits, the sweat, and other things that they left in here for us. If you look closely, you see the bricks actually moving on a straight line, telling us from the top of the bricks, everything here happens to the human waist, which is almost about 3 or 4 inches. So imagine the Africans staying down here, how high the waist probably would have been, and I'm sure it wouldn't be this solid. The more softer they were would produce heat and sickness. Please, the last chapter. Please be spared. Some will go this way, others will come this way. For some to stand in front of others because the place is small, so in terms of height, you can probably stand in front. All right. Alright, so this happens to be the last chamber, and this place was also used for the selection of the captives. The condition in here wouldn't make all of them fit to make it out. So when ships were ready, those seen extremely weak were kept at the extension over the rest were grouped in chains or ropes. They forced them through a tunnel that connects this place to the door or the gate of no return, about 65 to 70 meters away from this end. It's unfortunate we wouldn't go through the tunnel today, because in the year 1834, Captain George McLean, who was the administrator or the president of the merchant, was asked to block the tunnel, symbolizing the English ending slavery here. But then practically, they were still smuggling them until 1860. And I'm saying 1860 all because historically, the last ship left Africa from Benin to Alabama 1860, which was the Clotilda ship. So telling us, though laws had been passed, but illegally some still was smuggled. Even McLean himself, that was assigned to block this place as the overseer of this place, he was still keeping captives, and for that, a committee had to settle his issue somewhere in 1842. That was why they took him off and brought in a new person by the name Commander Hill. So records are there proving that he was still keeping captives. Blocking the tunnel they had here should also tell us this was not part of the dungeon system. Because if there should be an opening, this thing wouldn't be there to block them. The land we stand on was actually a sacred place for the natives. They would come in here to worship a deity they call Nana Tabi, which was in the form of a rock. But then having given the land out, they were asked to leave the place. So they took samples of the rock they were worshipping to the town. The castle that we see here was officially given to Ghanaians in 1960. That was when Ghana became a Republican country. And 30 years after 1973, they brought them back. So today, those that still believe in the traditional system, they do come in here to worship. That is why the man is seated there with the things they use for their prayers. If you look on the other end, you see read like this. They were brought in by visitors like yourself. I made mention you die in here, the body moves into the sea. But then we are of the belief that their souls are still here. So when you bring them, we don't litter around, rather places like this, we keep them to honor, respect, and remember the dead. So when you see them anywhere, they serve the same purpose. Question, comments, if you have any, you will let me know. Yes, please.
Yeah, so you made mention that they worship at the top, they are Christians, right? And they still have the stone where they
No, so the land was a sacred place before it was given to Europeans. So when it was given out, they left because you can't be here whilst they trade. So the castle was given to us, they brought it back, which was for me to return.
Okay.
So it was not in where the Africans were staying because I said it's a town, this comes out. So please, yes, ma'am. Any question? All right, so please, then we move to the next place.
So this is the top one.
I just came out of the door, John.
All right, so the plaque we are seeing here was unveiled in the year 1992. The chiefs in Ghana actually brought this plaque to render an apology for Africans' involvement in the trade. Because whatever be the case, Africans also got themselves involved. Whether it was one or two, they still had their role in there. If not for bringing captives in here, some as well gave them lands to settle for their comfort to go to trade. So render an apology and also remind us so we don't forget what happened. It reads in everlasting memory of the anguish of our ancestors. May those who died rest in peace. May those who return find their roots. May humanity never again perpetrate such injustice against humanity. We the living vow to uphold this. So a living being, if you wouldn't want yourself enslaved, then never get yourself involved in any slave activity. That was why they brought this. The other one is about Barack Obama and the wife when they came here 2009, July 11th. Please, let's have a look at the courtyard.
Sorry.
All right, so this section of the castle was a graveyard for some of the officers. The place was excavated 1996 and only 4 graves were left here, all because they were the only ones that had inscriptions as to the person buried underneath. Out of the 4 graves, this is the only African that was buried in the castle. The name Philip Kwaku, but originally he was Kwiku Ejiri from this town. His father, Okopo was one of the middlemen that were buying the cattle from the slave market during the war. So his role got his son a scholarship. He was taken to England at the age of 11. England, he was baptized into the Anglican faith. He got the name Philip, and also his name Kwiku got anglicized to Kwaku. That made him Philip Kwaku. Age 24, he became the first black man to be ordained as an Anglican priest after completing Oxford University as a theologist. And today, even in Oxford University, they still do celebrate him. Age 24, I said he was ordained. The following year, he was brought back here. So he came to serve this castle. So right up there, he served as a priest, head teacher, and an interpreter, whilst other Africans were staying beneath him. And one person here can't dictate what should be done in the castle. He served this castle for almost 15 years. The role that he played in the castle got him the befitting burial over there. But in Ghana, Philip is well known for Western education, because it is said at the point treatment for him here was very poor. Salary itself was not coming. So mostly in the town was where he would commerce to feed himself. Through that, he taught the natives how to read and write English language. So the first basic school that was built during this era has been named after him as the Philip Kwaku Boys School. Age 75, 1816, he died. They buried him. These 3 are all Europeans. First one is by name C.B. Whitehead. Whitehead, we don't know what actually killed him. As of today, some do say he was shot by a Dutch man. Others do say malaria killed him. He was 38 when he died 1812. The middle is a lady, Letitia Elizabeth London. London was here to visit the husband, and barely 2 months she was found dead in the husband's room. When she died, rumors spread she poisoned herself, because she got to know the husband, having stayed here for almost 8 years, was an African mistress. Some do say the mistress rather came to the castle, posed as a maid, had her poisoned because she also wanted to take the husband for herself. Others do say none of these two happened, rather she had malaria. She was 36 when she died 1838. Recently, I was also reading an article that also states saying that the lady might have been poisoned by the soldiers in the castle, all because Letitia's husband was the governor. When she came in, she got to know that although they had blocked the tunnel and they were still keeping captive, so they probably might have killed her just to cover up what they were doing here. Because she was an alternate poet, so probably she was reporting and she was in. So as of now, we don't know what killed her. The last one is the husband, and the husband is very popular in the Ghanaian history. The name George McLean. You remember I just said he blocked the tunnel connecting the fifth chamber to the door of no return. The judicial system that we use in Ghana, present day, he's the one that introduced to us. So the first Western court he established on our land is right up there, named after him as the McLean's Hall. Through that, he designed a lot of treaties, and in Ghana, the most popular one is called the Bond of 1844, which was the same bond that laid foundation after the 430 years. Age 46, malaria confirmed killed Guinea. That was 1847. So 46, 36, 38, 75. These are the graves that we have around. So if there is no question, we have a look. Yes. Sir.
You mentioned the number and the year this book was put up. Looking at it currently, it looks like it's really made up of solid stuff. So did they bring the materials you built this place up, or they got it from here?
So some were from this place, others were imported. So bricks, they manufacture some here, they brought some from England. The rocks are all from this land because they can't carry rocks outside. The binding materials, some they'll get here. The oyster shells, some also brought outside. Some of them were bent. Palm oil from this place, sand from the sea shores, African labor. Just in the wall. So these two things that you see there were storage tanks. I mean these two.
Storage.
They harvested rainwater from the roof of the castle. So they connected pipes and the captives. So drinking and cooking from these wells or tanks, they get water. Today we no longer harvest rainwater again. Rather, we've connected pipes to them. That when we short from the town, we can still get water to use. And we don't drink from them. Rather, we use it for restoration works and flushing the toilets. So please, let's see the condemned cell over there.
Man. Why? You fall sick because of what? Because of the stories you're hearing?
All right, so we stand in front of a condemned cell. The cell we see here was designed for the male captives that were fighting for their rights. Remember, I made mention in the dungeon that some of them would want to fight officers, others too would want to escape from this place. Doing that, you were seen to be rebellious, so they wouldn't send the rebellious ones back to the dungeons. Rather, in the presence of other captives, they got them beaten before they moved them into the cell. 3 doors would block them. In there, no food, no water, no air, and no light. So you get dehydrated, you suffocate, and then you die. But then the sad aspect is, let's say about 5 or 10 of the captives were sent there. A soldier had to stand at this gate to keep an eye on them. He'll be checking to make sure all of them were dead. So if I walk in and realize out of the 10, only 7 were dead, I wouldn't take them out until the last person was dead. They lay all these bodies on the floor for other captives to see, so that next time, if you also want to repeat the same thing, remembering what you saw on the floor will deter you from escaping or fight them. So it was more of a psychological way to control the other captives in the dungeons after they moved the bodies into the cell. But in this place, as we see this hole, was also a cell, a guard room for the soldiers of this castle, the Europeans. So when you are into drinking, doing things that we're not allowed to do in the castle, they keep you here for some days. Food is served, but then after you serve a day or 2, you go back to your normal duty. But the African, fighting for their right, moved to the other chamber that had 2 extra doors, like this. In this castle, all doors and windows you are to see have been restored, with the exception of this one. So this is the only original door we have left here. So if you lose this door, that means all the doors here are not original. Please, watch your head and join me inside.
Doesn't smell well at all.
Please, once you come in first, you go inside. Feel the space.
It's very neat. Fight the next time.
Alright, so luckily for us today, there's no door here, no door in the middle, the first door itself open, but I'm sure we still feel the heat. So imagine having just one door or two doors blocking us. And like I said, until the last person was there in here, nobody leaves this place. That is why today some do prefer calling this place the room or the cell of no return, because you enter as a living being and only dead bodies were to be taken out. I wouldn't want anyone dying here, so please watch your head. Watch your head, watch your head. This is serious.
This even this guy, prison break, what's his name?
Microscopic.
Second gate. Let's do second gate.
All right, so please, we have a look at where the gap last being.
Look at the ventilation, yeah. Yeah, so ventilated, huh?
Hello. Alright, so please continue with we stand inside the Palava Hall or the marketplace. Remember, I made mention from wherever the Africans were brought from once they got to the castle. There was a place where nurses, doctors would examine them, group them into domestic commercial captives. Then the merchants over there to, according to your physique and as well your strength, they do exchange you with the gunpowder, the mirrors and other stuff they had up here. After the exchange, all the captives are taken downstairs for branding. The castle actually was controlled by the Royal African Company, just that Liverpool, Brest and other individual merchants were in here. So once you buy yours, you do mark them for identification purposes. This same Palava Hall we stand is where some 8 coastal chiefs also met with Commander Hill, Captain George McLean and some 2 other English officials to sign the bond of 1844, which was the same bond that laid foundation for our colonization for the 113 years. So if you see anywhere where they tell you that the bond was signed at Formina, it is never true, because the English will never leave their jurisdiction and as well take Fantis to an Asante land to go sign a bond which has nothing to do with them. So it was in this castle where they signed the bond, and now others are saying that it was at Formina. Just that the Treaty of Formina is different from what? The floors, the ceilings, the doors and windows have all been restored. just that we tried to maintain the whole design that we had. The only thing we came to meet here happens to be at the edges. You see some black ceilings there. Apart from the black ceiling, whatever you are seeing, including the walls, are all restored. These are not.
Including the windows and
the windows, the doors, everything we've changed. Restored, everything. So if you have no question, let's see where the governor was staying after we've seen the students barracks.
Let's move forward a little so we can.
Alright, so this section of the castle, including the ground floor, was the barracks for the soldiers. The soldiers stayed over there, used the medal as their canteen. George McLean, I made mention, introduced us to the way the Europeans settled disputes. So the room from this end, stretching to where the window is open, was actually a court room, and it was introduced to us around 1840s. Around that time, the tunnel had been blocked, indicating they had ended the trade here. So they got this place converted to a prison for the Africans. And it was a prison from 1840s until 1992. That is about 33 years ago. That was when they built the Ankafo prison. So they moved them from this place to Ankafo. And this is not the only place that's located as a prison. James Fort, Asher Fort, and Amabo were all prisons, just as this place also, they say. Today, as you can all see, a craft shop. So it was first the garrison, became a prison, and now a craft shop. The middle part, which was the canteen for the soldiers, is now a coffee shop. So still serves the same purpose. The business or the trade here was very profitable. I'm talking of the human trafficking aspect and the gold trade. So if you had gotten a place and you don't protect your end, other Europeans were also ready to fight you and take over the land. So the castle that we see here was built by the English, but then the land itself had been used by 4 different Europeans before the English came here. Portuguese were the first settlers. After they erected the Elmina Castle, a section of their traders came here. But on this land, because they already had the Elmina Castle, they just built a timber lodge. They stayed here or operated for almost 100 years until the Dutch fought them at Elmina. So they left Elmina, they had to abandon this place. When they left, the Swedish took over the following year. The Swedish built a fort here, stayed in for about 5 years. Danish from nowhere came in, fought the Swedish. Danish stayed here almost 2 years. The Dutch came in, fought the Danish. Dutch stayed here for about 3 years, and the English also fought the Dutch. So when the English took over, they expanded the Swedish fort into a castle. They stayed here for 296 years. The English knew enemies would fight them, so they were fully prepared to protect their gains. So if you look all over the castle, you see heavy metal, the cannons with their balls, and mostly if you visit the English forts that they built around in castles, you see most of these things, although others had this, the English had a lot of them, all because they wanted to monopolize the trade. When these weapons were erected, they also built 2 forts to keep an eye on the castle. So if you look up on the hill, you'll see one of the forts over there, the white building with the red cap. It is called Fort Wolia, which is on the east. And there is one also behind this Anglican church called Victoria. So William and Victoria soldiers will be up there. They will see any group coming from the land and any group from the sea. When they do so, they signal those up here. In the morning by waving flags. In the afternoon, they use a reflection of mirrors. evenings they use torches indicating enemies approaching. So the soldiers would get to where the cannons are, put in gunpowder, place the balls at the mouth, lights the match, straight into the enemy ship, water goes in there, it sinks into the sea. And that helped the English surviving for the 296 years. Because they came 1664, they only left our shores 1960 when Ghana became a Republican country. And I'm even talking of the time they built this, they came to this land, not to Ghana, but then Gold Coast, because they have been here before, they even came to build this country. Everything that we work on till we enter the governor's room is still original. I mean the marble stones and the pitch pine wood. We have them from those days, from till now. We go this way.
Yeah, that's all right.
Maybe they just make it up and they put it down. So if you are researching and just go online to make those information. Yes. And even the Europeans themselves also sometimes distort the history. Because the aspect is if they tell you the whole truth, probably you point fingers to them. So always they just also as well beat around. Yes. Yeah. Alright, so we stand inside the governor's living room. In here, I need not to say much, because we've all seen the dungeons and you saw what the captives actually were going through down there. This place is for the governor, only one person staying here. The breeze coming in, the view of the sea, the lighting system, the space to which he stayed alone should tell us he was enjoying up here. And aside having a living room with 9 windows, he had his bedroom with 5 windows, his corridor also with 2. So all over he had 16 windows, which will help him get about 360 look all over. In the dungeons, if you actually took a good look at the size of the vent for the captives, they look similar to this. Of which this whole thing actually is half of the window, and this is 6. The whole male dungeons, there is only 9 down there, of which this, the complete one, is 12. So probably if you multiply 12 by 16, the governor had about 192 smaller holes for himself, whilst 1,000 humans were sharing just 9. Just have a look at the bedroom before we move to his reception. This one.
Happiness and enjoyment. This is definitely not bad.
All right, so we've seen the living room and the bedroom already. This was the reception area for the governor. Here he received visitors. They do their drinking, will entertain them in here. The smaller chamber over there was the personal office. So one person, once appointed as the governor, would have an office, a reception, a living, and a bedroom. Underneath us, starting from where the lady stands, it extends a little bit out, happens to be the first chamber of the male dungeon, the second, the third, which is the church over there, the fourth and fifth move this way. Just that when you were up here, you wouldn't hear anything from the dungeons because of the thickness of the wall. But in the church, whatever went on, like I said, you smell, you hear, and see it. So please, let's see the church. What is this? Oh, it's a bent, a spy hole. So remember, were you with us in the dungeon? Were you with us in the dungeons? Were you there? So remember, I pointed up, saying you see, you smell, and hear. So if you remember, what is the name of the church? If you are listening. Alright, so we were in the dungeons. I pointed to a hole, saying walking in and out of the church, you smell, hear, and see the things that was happening in the dungeon. So that is the hole we saw at the third chamber, and that is the entrance to the church. Society for the Propagation of the Gospel, today Anglican Church. It is no longer a church nor a school for the mixed race. Like I said, it is now a library for the community as well. Please, question, comments, if you have any. Yes,
people from the community just walk to the library.
Yeah, they come in once it is open, like weekdays, Mondays to Fridays. Yes, that mostly we open it at the time we are around. So, and then it's more of kids' books, like basic books, not only the higher level books are more of theology books about church and stuff.
But are there any books that have any stories about?
We have stories about the slave trade, but not specifically about this aspect. It is more of world history, about, let's say, specific people that played roles in the trade and all that, like that kind of comic aspect. Please, let's move to the door very soon. Alright, so from the fifth chamber where we saw the priest seated, I made mention the tunnel connects them to the door of no return. So the wall that we just walked past happens to be an underground tunnel. So this was the exit. Just as they blocked the entrance 1834, the same date the exit also got blocked, 1834. But the design of the castle, the captives were not supposed to walk out this way. Rather, through the tunnel, they just would channel themselves over there. So the door of no return was on that side. But then they got it blocked off because the sea was coming in from that direction. So those days, the European soldiers, probably one would join them through the tunnel. Others would stand up there, coming out down. I'm sure you saw those two holes. So they just stand there to make sure they will come in. They command them, the next person counts them, making sure the same numbers from the dungeon is the same group coming in. Then they use this end. But then because the sea was coming in, they blocked that door and created a new one over here. The smaller chamber here was a female punishment cell. The males got condemned, but the females were punished. Majority of them being punished were those that were resisting rape. European merchants here will not come with their wives. So whenever they want to satisfy themselves sexually, inside the female dungeons, they pick any lady of their choice to abuse or rape. If you were brave to uphold the little dignity you had in here, they will punish you. The punishment is to stay for some days so that next time, if they come back to pick you, you will open. But then not all of them were also willing to stay in the cell, because the dungeon itself was not easy, not to isolate and bring them here. Once you open up, they move you upstairs, wash you and take you to bed. They will bring you back. Because of the delay of the ships, some got pregnant. When they see you pregnant, they wouldn't put you in the dungeons. They take you from there, take care of you so you give birth. After delivering, the mother is allowed to take care of the baby for some months until they see both mother and baby fit. They separate them. The mother is brought back for the next available to take it from this place. Because get to know, before you were raped, someone had already purchased you. So you belong to a particular group. They bring you back, the babies were for them. These babies, they had nannies. Nannies were the domestic females here, take care of them so that when they grow, they bring them to the church. So remember I said they brought some mixed race up there. Majority of them was a result. The nannies were the domestic slaves. They were not Ghanaians, but the domestic slaves, because they were from different tribes altogether. So they take care of them. When they grow, they bring them to the church. During and as well after the trade, some left this place, others also stayed behind, got mixed up in our communities. That is why today, if you check most of our coastal zones, we have a lot of European surnames. So Accra and Volta region, you hear names like Morgan, Van der Poel, Van Dyke, Wales, Wolves, Brown, and others. Yes, and others. And if you come to Central region, Western, you hear names like Smith, William, Wilberforce, McCarthy, McLean, Swansea, De Graft, and others. A lot of them happens to be descendant of the mixed race. Others also corrupt and adapt names as well. So, that is, please, we proceed on this one. Which is all right. I see. All right. So this is the female dungeon, and the female dungeon had two separate chambers. One in here, the other is also directly opposite us. We estimate about 150 or less of them staying here, the same numbers over there. In the male dungeons, you could see that there's a bit spacious, but I said there is 150 or more, and here I'm saying 150 or less, because the females was not as many as the males. And the condition in here was similar to what the males had. They would defecate, urinate, sleep, virtually do everything in here. But in the worst aspect, we all know only females do menstruate. So imagine if you were to stay in for more than a month and no officer moving in here to pick you to rape you, that means the menses would be open. So imagine the infections, the pain, the stench, trauma, and others. You die in here, the body moves into the sea. The main reason for them adding the females to the trade was for them to reproduce, to give birth. And they could also multiply the numbers of the slaves once they got into the new world. So that was the main focus. Their source of vent here, an extra one over there as well as behind us, just that it was blocked with bars. So you can see the holes of the bar still there. They've taken it out and rusted out. Let's see the last place, the door of no return. Alright, so the door or the gate of no return. This is not the original door. Because originally, if it was made this big, I'm sure at night a lot of them would probably run off. It was a short and narrow door designed for one person to fit at a time. And you can't walk out standing, rather you bend or bow to fit through a door that they have. Cape Coast now is having a bigger door, all because the English at a point made this town the capital city of Gold Coast. And the castle we see here became their administrative quarters. So that made them expand the door for goods to be moving in and out until 1877. The city was taken to Accra. Accra is still the capital city of present-day Ghana. Africans that exited from this door never returned back. You walk out of this place, you lose your right as a human being, you lose your connection with your people, you lose your dignity and as well your identity as an African. I'm saying you lose your identity all because of prisoner descent. That and I can't descend. Adoku from Kutao. Upper East, so not. Say again?
I don't.
The same Adoku from Grant.
Oh, you mean by making it?
Yeah.
By making the grant.
Grant. Oh, I will make Grant today. Last person please. Operate or another account. So let me see, I don't know them from anywhere, but I can guess what the country based on the names they gave. I didn't pick a name Grant because Grant Colonel is not her name. So let's say he's from Volta, let's say he's Upper West, but let's say you're from Volta to this, let's say Maoli. She's from Accra, Yewi. From let's say Akan tribes, from the Igbo lands, let's say Emeka and the doctor of the beautiful. Once you all get to the same plantation, all of you are going to be Christian, giving names like Esther, Mary, James, Philip, and others. Your master is Swansea, so automatically you all tend to be Swansea because you can't property. So if I become Thomas Swansea, James Swansea, Stephen Swansea, Swansea, all the same. We speak different languages, and the language barrier can't help us communicate. So the best option is for us adapting our master's language. So years to come, all these tribes are going to speak the same language and also bear the same descendants that are born probably lose identity. Out of this place, you lose your right because you will be killed at any point, any time, and asking when you wanted to do so. You know, the trade from Europe to Africa to the Americas was back with insurance. So as to whether he survived or died, they were still making money out of them. So at the point, the merchant intention of killing the Africans, all because they knew whether you were alive or dead, they still were going to get their compensation of the money. So with that, they killed them, they still make money out of them. A lot of these Africans had never seen the ocean before, because majority of them came from the inner lands. So getting to see the ocean for the first time got them scared, thinking that they were to be killed. When placed on smaller boats or canoes to take them into bigger ships, they themselves were jumping into the sea to commit suicide. I am willing to jump, he's also willing to jump, but then he's not. Once we are in chains together, we jump, we pull others with us, we are all in together because we are in chains groups. You get to the bigger ship, you get them laid head till before they transport them. Historically, the largest number were taken to the south. Brazil had the highest concentration. That is why today, Brazil is in Africa. We talk of areas with populated blacks. After Nigeria and Africa, Brazil is the second country with a lot of blacks as well. Argentina, Colombia, and other places. The Caribbean lands, Haiti, Jamaica, Cuba, Trinidad and Tobago, Suriname, Barbados, Antigua and others. Some also went up north, mostly eastern section of US of A. Florida, North, South Carolina, Mississippi, Virginia, New York and others, and some also went to Europe. England and other places today we see blacks spread. As I speak with you, we keep getting different numbers, but in the world now has set about 12.5 million Africans making it to the New World. And out of these numbers, they are saying 3 times more also died. It used to say about 38 million Africans died, and only 12.5 survived. Personally, I don't believe that, all because if the same history can tell us that just in the space of about 40 years, King Leopold from Belgium could kill almost 10 million Africans in Congo. We can't tell for 30 years they shipped only 50 million and only 12.5 survived. So it means the number is not true. They just reduce the impact so people didn't know. Because you can't tell me 40 years, 10 people working in Congo, and 10 years only 12 people in the talent. That is not making sense. Because if you use just this castle alone, if every year they ship just 1,000 people, multiply that by 200 years, how many people live in this castle? We have Namina, we have Osu, and other 40 around us. We are all using this door. Us standing here, we are all returning to a place.
African black baby,
You box if you want. Alright, so the captives were made to use the door of no return. The soldiers, merchants, and others had their own bigger door up there. So before they would even walk out, soldiers would be out here waiting for them. You come, canoes would be down there to pick them, to move them into the bigger ships. That was where some of them were jumping into the sea to commit suicide. The defense wall you are seeing here was made just about 3 years ago. So the sea was closer than what you see now. Because of the defense wall, it keeps moving back past the sea today. This whole place had the name European Beach, a place meant for only European activities because of the trees in and around this place. Today it's a fishing port for the community, but then the name is still maintained. They call this place Abrofu Mkwano, which translates the same thing as European Beach. We look just at the flip of the no return. We have the door of return there.
Because we can return.
We had this door in the year 1998. That was when we celebrated our first Emancipation Day. We do call it the big or the great homecoming day. Descendants of those that survived the journey had to come home to interact and feel their lands again. The living coming here never came alone, they came with their ancestors. So they exhumed 2 mortal remains to represent them. One was from the Americas, the other was from the Caribbean. So from New York, a man by name Samuel Carlson, and from Jamaica, a lady, Madam Krista. They brought the remains to Ghana, first taken to a place they call Abanzi, where they have fort, Amsterdam. From Amsterdam, they had to use the Atlantic Ocean through this door or gate of no return, breaking the chains and the chains that said no slave will return back. But in the same way they came out of the door onto the sea, the same sea also brought them back through that door, and that made us change the name to the door of return. Rituals were performed for the dead in there. They remembered not all that came out of this castle were Ghanaians. Some were from present-day Nigeria, Togo, Benin, and others. And even had it not been the Berlin Conference, there wouldn't be any geopolitical boundaries. So the bodies were taken to a place called Asin Mansu. Today, you visit that site, you wouldn't see just 2. That of Samuel Carlson and Madam Krista. Recently, we had one from Barbados. That was 2019, when we celebrated the year of return. So now there are 3. From Jamaica, New York, and Barbados. We see them at where they have the river. Question, comments, if you have any, you will let me know. If not, we return to conclude everything together.
We are back.
I want you to be in front. This is the first time. This is the first time you have.
Yes.
How many days in Ghana?
About
6 days?
Yes. Yeah.
First time in Ghana? No, then I wouldn't ask you to ask him. But that's one of that first time. It's your first time in Ghana? No, it's okay. No, once you're in Ghana, you know it. You've been in Ghana. So do you know father?
Thank you.
Please, we give that face. Give that a good face. So you said 2 things. Which one's that thing? Thank you or welcome. Which is which? Just pick one.
Familiar, yeah.
Just pick one.
All right, you're welcome.
You've done it. Oh, that's good. Alright, so just as he said, Akwaba here means welcome. We have it all because we see this door as a pilgrimage. For many years, humans like all of us here went out, they couldn't return back. So today, anybody that walks out of this door and returns, the best we can do is to welcome you to the castle. It was unveiled 2009 when Barack Obama and the wife came in. So this was to welcome them to the castle for their tour until they went out. And today we used to welcome anybody. That's what I works through to say. We are ending the tour now. I always do say the best person that should be narrating the history should be the castle or the walls, because this wall experienced everything I'm saying. None of us standing here were born those days to know exactly what happened in this structure. In here, we don't frame stories to create any psychological trauma in anyone's mind. Neither are we inciting people to go out there to fight what happened in the past or to cause segregation of races and tribes. We want each and everyone that enters this castle to know the inhuman acts, to know the crimes and the atrocities that happened some years back, so we can learn from the past. Because today we keep deceiving ourselves, saying slavery ended somewhere in 1860, but deep in all of us, we know the system still stays. Africa here, we can talk of tribalism, colorism, child labor, economic and slavery, gender imbalance, and others. In the world, we all know of racism, imperialism, caste system, this neo-colonial system, and others. A living being, if you wouldn't want yourself enslaved, then never get yourself involved in any slave activities. Do unto others as we expect them to do. Living this place, we become agents of change, regardless of our race, our tribes, our gender, our religious beliefs, economic background, or humans. The most important thing, we should never forget about the past, because the past is always there to guide us. You forget the past, you repeat the same mistake again. So thank you all for visiting this castle. I'm sure we've learned a lot. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Amazing. I run the city even though I'm not from here. Subscribe for more adventures and follow me on Instagram to stay connected.